All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do this chapter 2 investigative project. So the first thing it says is choose an athlete or team that you're interested in investigating, and then choose a categorical variable that you'll use to measure the athlete's performance in the regular season and in the postseason. Um, and then find the relevant data on the internet. Okay, so I think that using ESPN.com is the best for this. I would really recommend that you kind of either do a baseball player, kind of their a baseball hitter, like their hits versus at bats, their hits versus non hits, or you can do a quarterback, a football quarterback, if you'd like to do pass completions versus non completions, or you can do a basketball player for like shots made versus shots missed. So I'm going to go ahead and open up ESPN.com here. And you kind of you need a player who went to the playoffs at least 1 year. And we're just going to study kind of 1 year here. And so when I think of the playoffs, I kind of think of my favorite team when I was in school was the Anaheim Angels. They were called the Anaheim Angels at the time. And my favorite player there, his name was Adam Kennedy. So I'm going to look up Adam Kennedy here. I can't find him. Actually, let me search here. Adam Kennedy, ESPN. There we go. You can find his page. All right. So we'll see if we can pull this up here. It's going slow. You can see he's from Riverside, so a Southern California guy. So I'm going to click over to his stats. And so on baseball, you can see they have the career batting. So this would be like the regular season. And then down here would be the postseason. That's the playoffs. I know for football and basketball, the tab right here actually switches from regular season to playoffs. So you're going to have to do that for football or basketball. But I'm thinking of the 2002 World Series. So the Angels won the World Series that year. So you can see that his average was 340. That's 34% hitter that year. And then we can compare that to the regular season for 2002. That same season, he was 312. So you can see we did have an increase there. So that's what you're looking for, either a big increase or a big decrease from the regular season to the playoffs. All right. So that's the year I'm going to do. So I'm going to go back to the project here and see what we need. So first of all is write an introduction that states the question of interest. So I'll go ahead and do that here. I'm going to go ahead and do this in red. And so I could say something like, did Adam Kennedy overperform? Or I'm going to say, yeah, I'll just say overperform significantly in the 2002 playoffs. My question of interest. All right, and then just do a little background. So I just talk a little bit about how the team did in the season. So in 2002, the Anaheim Angels won their only World Series. So Mr. Berry was in high school when this happened. I was very excited. It was a great year. So I remember that several players stepped up during the playoffs. And Adam Kennedy was one of them. And so I'll say he had a great year that year during the regular season, adding 0.312, which is hits in 31.2% of at bats. That's kind of how they do it in baseball. They show it with that decimal there. But in the playoffs, his average went up to 0.340, which is 34% hits. I chose him because I was at a Yankee game in the playoffs, so the Angels against the Yankees, when he hit 3 home runs in a game. That was very exciting. I also had a friend in high school at this time with the same name. So we thought that was really cool that there was a player on the Angels named Adam Kennedy, and I had a friend in high school that was named Adam Kennedy. All right, so it also asks for our null and alternative hypotheses. So I'll go ahead and write those. All right, so null hypothesis. So for this one, we always kind of do the percentage that's based on kind of the old percentage. So that's going to be, in this case, the regular season. So I'm going to say Adam Kennedy's ability to hit the ball. And then I'm going to say in the 2002 playoffs was 31.2%. So I'm using the percentage from the regular season, but I'm saying, and this is a hypothesis, so I don't know if this is true, but I'm saying for the null hypothesis, we're saying that that is the same, that carries over into the playoffs. Now, the alternative hypothesis is saying that Adam Kennedy's ability to hit the ball in the 2002 playoffs was greater than 31.2%. So sometimes this will be less than right here. Sometimes it's greater than. It's based on, in the actual playoffs, did he overperform or did he underperform? All right. If he would have underperformed in the playoffs, I would have had my alternative hypothesis is less than right there, but it still would have been the same percentage from my null hypothesis. So that's how we set up number 1. Okay, so let's go on to number 2 there. So it says state the number of successes and failures in the regular season and display these on a graph. Okay, so for the graph, you're going to go down here and click on this applet that can create a graph for you. There's other websites that can create graphs as well, but I'll go ahead and click on this one. Okay, so we need his hits and misses for the regular season. So for the regular season, where are the hits? Okay, so for 2002, he got 148 hits. So we'll do hits 148, and we'll just say Adam Kennedy hits, and I'll go regular season. All right, and then I'm going to need non-hits, so that could be outs and stuff like that. Now, it has the total at-bats here is 474. So, and they usually do this. They do kind of the hits in the total. So the non-hits then I would have to subtract those numbers. So I'm going to do 474 minus 148, and we get 326. So that number's not on here. You have to get it by subtracting the at-bats minus the hits. Or if you have like the completions and out of the total passes, you would subtract those as well. For like shots, they kind of do that as well for basketball players. So if he made like, 170 out of 200 shots, that means he missed 30 because he would subtract those numbers. So for me, I subtract those numbers. I get 326 non-hits. And so then I'll just begin analysis here. It's going to make up a graph for me. And so I want to get this graph and I want to get this data down here. You can see that 31.2% does match up what I had. So I'm just going to grab my snipping tool here. If you don't, or actually, let me close that out. So if you've never used a snipping tool before, I just go in here and search for snip. So this program already should be installed. You just grab a new snip, and I'm just going to click and get all of this, my graph and that table. And so it'll just, I can edit and copy this and then take it to my project, paste it in there. I'll make it a little smaller here. That should be good. Okay, so there we go. And now I just need to do the same thing for the playoffs. So for the playoffs, Adam Kennedy in 2002. Oops, I went too far here. All right, so he had 16 hits and 47 at-bats. So 16 out of 47. I'm going to redo my graph here. So now the hits are 16. The non-hits, oh yeah, I'm going to change this, okay? So I had 47 total at-bats. So 47 at-bats minus 16 hits means that he had 31 non-hits. And we're going to switch this to the playoffs or postseason. All right, and so you can see here there's that 34%. So that does match up again. That's a good sign. All right, so I'm going to now snip this. So I'm just going to do a new. And I'm going to grab this one. I'll copy that and put it in my, paste it in my project for number 3. All right. So there's my graph. All right, this one also asks, explain how these data provide evidence for the alternative. All right, so it's asking me how this graph provides evidence for the alternative hypothesis, and then also provide 2 explanations for this evidence. So back to this graph here for the playoffs. So what I said for this one, so the graph provides evidence the alternative hypothesis because the playoffs he got hits in 34% of his at-bats, which is more than the 31.2% in the regular season. Remember, we were comparing that to the regular season. So, and it says the 2 explanations. So whenever they ask that, we do one explanation for the null hypothesis and one for the alternative. So this one's really kind of an explanation for the null hypothesis, is that his ability was still 31.2%, but his performance increased due to random chance. And so that's just saying that, yes, he did a little bit better here, but it was probably just due to random chance, not necessarily his ability. Now, the other explanation for this evidence is the alternative hypothesis, which is that his ability actually increased during the playoffs. Okay, so next up, describe how you would simulate an athlete's performance in the playoffs using a spinner. So I said here I would create a spinner with 2 sections. One would be 31.2%. So that's referencing the regular season percentage there for me. And that would represent hits. And the other would be 68.8%, and that would represent no hit. That's kind of going back to my graph up here for the regular season. You can see I had 31.2% hits. But then 68.8% non-hits, and that should add up to 100, which you can see it does there. And then I would spin it 47 times. Now the 47 times is actually from the playoffs, because we're like simulating the playoffs here, but with his regular season percentages. And I would repeat the process at least 100 times. So they asked us to do it on the applet 10,000 trials. And so you can really, if you still have your playoffs graph here, which you can see I still do on this website, you scroll down here, and there is an extra button down there that says, what does it say here? Or begin analysis. Yeah, there's an extra button here that brings up this menu. So just click on that, and then we can simulate the sample percent. Make sure you switch that to simulate the sample percent. And we have the hypothesized percent that's coming from my null hypothesis here. So that was 31.2%. And the number of samples we want to add, that'll be 10,000. So everyone's will be different for the hypothesized percent, excuse me. That's just whatever is in your null hypothesis. It should be from the regular season percentage. Now we're going to add the samples. Okay, so we get this graph. Now, my alternative hypothesis was greater than, so I'm going to pick greater than. And then I go ahead and I put the playoff percentage here. So the playoff percentage was 34%. So I put that right there. And I do greater than right here. Once again, if your alternative hypothesis was less than, if your player underperformed in the playoffs, you would do less than. But for me, I do this one. So you can see here I got 39.3% of the dots. I'm going to go ahead and do another snip here. Get my snipping tool. All right. And I'll copy that and I'll paste that into my project as well. There you go. Okay. And so then use the results of the simulation to discuss if an athlete's team performance in the postseason was likely or unlikely to happen by random chance alone. So I would sit here because it's fairly uncommon. I put 30. You can see this is 39.3. Last time I did it, it was 39.1. So whatever you get on the simulation, it'll actually be different every time because it does a new simulation. But in either way, I said because it was fairly common. So what's common? Well, anything greater than 5% is going to be common. So 5% or less would be uncommon. This one's fairly common for the simulated data to create playoffs in which a 31.2% hitter did better than 34%. There is not convincing evidence that Adam Kennedy's ability increased in the 2002 playoffs. It is more likely that his ability stayed the same and the extra hits were because of random chance. So I'm kind of going with the null hypothesis here because in a lot of these simulations, he kind of did just as well at almost 40%. If your simulation was less than 5% here, you would actually say that he did overperform in the playoffs. This was his ability increasing. So you'd say there's evidence for whatever you said for the alternative hypothesis. All right. So to whom or what does your conclusion apply? So I said it only applies to Adam Kennedy in the 2002 playoffs. The conclusion is limited since we only looked at one season. However, Adam Kennedy only made the playoffs one more time after this, which was in 2005, in which he underperformed as compared to his regular season. And then lastly, you want to cite your source. So whatever the ESPN.com site that you got your players' information from, just throw it right there.